Welcome to Show Chroma Celebs. I'm Luna Mendoza, bringing you the latest shocking updates on Sister Wives. Unexpected twists, emotional moments, and unbelievable drama. Stay tuned till the end. Robyn's flippant move seals the deal for fans. A pop gesture turned cultural earthquake. When Robyn, the Swedish pop icon known for her melancholic euphoria and emotionally charged dance anthems, casually released a song titled Moo, few knew what to make of it. In a career marked by profound lyrical introspection and masterfully constructed electronic landscapes, the sudden emergence of such a flippantly titled track seemed at first glance almost comedic, perhaps even dismissible. But Robyn has never been an artist to act without purpose. The title may be whimsical, the tone lighthearted, and the delivery tongue-in-cheek, but Moo has erupted into something far more than a joke. It has become a pivot, a pop culture statement, and, paradoxically, one of the most emotionally revealing works she has released in years. From the opening bars, Moo disorients in the most Robyn-esque way possible. A soft, looping synth hovers like the intro of a nursery rhyme dipped in Scandinaminalism, but as Robyn's voice floats in, nonchalantly uttering Moo as if she's stretching vowels for the sheer pleasure of it, listeners are immediately thrown into the sort of existential limbo where nothing is as it seems. On the surface, it sounds like absurdism. A woman mooing, with conviction, in a pop song? But the effect is uncanny. For longtime fans, this is not simply a sonic gag. It is a mirror, cracked, refracted, and aimed back at the expectations we place on pop artists, on women, and on language itself. To understand the full impact of Moo, one must first understand the mythos of Robyn. Emerging in the late 1990s with a fresh-faced pop sound that initially slotted her alongside teen idols, Robyn soon broke free of the machine to chart her own artistic trajectory. Her 2005 self-titled album was a manifesto of autonomy, her 2010 Body Talk series a trilogy of emotional clarity through electronic catharsis. Songs like Dancing on My Own and Call Your Girlfriend were not just hits, they became life soundtracks for people who wanted to dance through their pain, not deny it. Robyn offered something different, vulnerability encased in synth, confession set to a four-on-the-floor beat. So when an artist like that utters something as offhanded as Moo into a microphone and lets it hang suspended and unresolved, it's never just flippancy. It's a disruption. The lyrical minimalism of Moo is deceptively sophisticated. While the repeated utterance of the word might suggest parody or performance art, in Robyn's hands it becomes a refrain, a meditative mantra, a refusal to explain. She does not offer context nor justification. There is no verse that suddenly reframes the utterance as metaphor, no chorus that elaborates on a theme. Instead, the track cycles through subtle shifts in harmony and texture while Robyn coos and sighs variations of the titular sound. In doing so, she resists traditional storytelling and leans into something more primal, the voice as instrument, emotion without articulation, sound before sense. Critics, initially divided, have come to embrace Moo not just as a novelty, but as a radical act of artistic confidence. In a musical landscape increasingly shaped by algorithms, where songs are tailored for TikTok virality and hooks are engineered down to the millisecond, Robyn's refusal to explain herself is revolutionary. She challenges the listener not to decode but to feel. The Moo is not a placeholder. It is the point. And in the silence around it, in the pauses between her melodic moos, is the real message. Art need not always justify itself in words. Fans, predictably, have gone into interpretive overdrive. On Twitter, think pieces disguised as threads attempt to unpack the cultural significance of the Moo. Is it commentary on the absurdity of fame? A nod to the bovine sacredness of silence in a noisy age? A sonic shrug aimed at music critics who over-intellectualize every note she sings? Memes abound. Fan art flourishes. A single syllable has become a rallying cry for those tired of perfection and hungry for play. But beneath the jokes and joyful absurdity, there is something deeply liberating about Robyn's latest turn. In many ways, Moo is her way of stripping it all back. Having built a career on complex emotional honesty, perhaps the truest form of expression left to her was nonsense. Or rather, a nonsense that points to the failure of language to hold everything we feel. The Moo is the moment when no words remain, when words have failed and all that is left is sound, breath, presence. In live performances, the song takes on an even more surreal tone. Dressed in flowing robes and surrounded by minimalist stage design, Robyn steps into a persona that is part oracle, part absurdist clown. She stares into the crowd, moos, and the crowd moos back, not with irony but with joy. It becomes communal, cathartic. In those shared moments, irony dissolves. The audience understands that the song is not a joke but a gift, a strange and silly liberation from the weight of always having to make sense. As pop culture continues to evolve and fragment, Robyn's moo stands as a monument to the power of not trying too hard, of releasing control, of letting go of perfection. It dares to be unserious in a time when seriousness is currency, and in doing so, it says more about the state of art, media, and emotional burnout than 1,000 expertly crafted ballads ever could. There is also, perhaps, a sly feminist undercurrent to moo. Robyn, long aware of how the music industry polices female expression, takes one of the oldest stereotypes, the silly woman, the nonsensical girl, the bimbo, and reclaims it. If a man released a song with the same minimalist audacity, would it be hailed as experimental genius? Perhaps. Robyn does not ask that question directly. She moos. And in that refusal to conform to expectation, she levels a critique sharper than any diatribe. In interviews, she has remained mostly silent about the song's meaning. It felt right, she says. It felt funny. And that was enough. That statement alone has stirred its own ripple of analysis, with some seeing it as a manifesto. Art, she implies, doesn't always have to carry moral weight. It can be fun. It can be flippant. It can be a moo in the middle of a mess. What moo ultimately represents is not a pivot away from depth, but a reinvention of what depth can look and sound like. It asks us to listen with new ears. It invites us to stop thinking so hard. It challenges our biases about meaning, seriousness, and artistic intent. And perhaps most importantly, it reminds us why we fell in love with Robyn in the first place. Not because she always made sense, but because she always made us feel. As we live through a time saturated with commentary, opinion, and interpretation, Robyn has chosen something both simpler and more radical. She has chosen to moo. And in doing so, she has given her fans a moment of unexpected clarity, absurd beauty, and a reason to laugh without guilt. Because sometimes the most powerful thing an artist can do is not speak, not explain, not strive, but simply let the sound out and see what happens next. The world of Sister Wives has never been short on drama, but in a franchise built on emotional landmines and the unraveling of unconventional bonds, even seasoned fans were left stunned when Janelle Brown, the even-keeled, soft-spoken second wife of Kody Brown, uttered the words that had been lingering just beneath the surface for years. In a moment of raw vulnerability, caught not just by the cameras but seemingly by her own internal emotional reckoning, Janelle admitted with remarkable clarity that she simply doesn't like Kody and Robyn anymore. Not that she's annoyed, not that things are tense, but that she no longer likes them. The frankness of the statement landed like a lightning strike through the community of viewers who have followed this family's journey for more than a decade. For longtime watchers of the TLC reality series, which has chronicled the highs and lows of the Brown family's polygamous lifestyle since its premiere in 2010, the emotional distance between Janelle and Kody had been a slow burn. But the use of the word like instead of love or respect marked a departure from the carefully curated language so often employed by members of plural marriages. It was not a phrase coated in diplomacy or spiritual detachment. It was personal, plain, and painfully honest. That admission sparked an online wildfire as fans across platforms, Reddit, TikTok, Twitter, and countless discussion forums dissected every syllable, tone, and facial expression that accompanied Janelle's confession. What makes this revelation all the more seismic is not just the content of Janelle's words, but the context in which they were spoken. Over the course of the past several seasons, viewers have observed a growing divide within the family. While Kody and Robyn appeared increasingly aligned, forming what many viewers perceived as a monogamous-style dynamic under the guise of plural marriage, the other wives, particularly Janelle and Christine, seemed to drift to the margins. Christine's departure in 2021 had already shaken the family structure to its core, with her decision to leave Kody marking a watershed moment in the show's narrative arc. But Janelle's role had always been a stabilizing one. She was seen as the pragmatic partner, the one who approached plural marriage with a kind of intellectual discipline rather than raw emotionalism. That she, of all people, would now say aloud that she doesn't like the patriarch or his most favored wife felt like the final crack in a dam that has long been under pressure. Online reaction was swift and fierce. Within hours of the episode airing, fan reactions flooded in with hashtags like #TeamJanelle, #SisterWivesTruth, and #RobynGate trending across social media platforms. For many fans, Janelle's words did not just validate years of speculation but also voiced frustrations they had long felt on her behalf. Viewers recalled moments in past seasons where Janelle's needs were quietly sidelined, where her emotional labor was taken for granted, and where her stoic disposition was mistaken for contentment. Now, with a single sentence, Janelle rewrote her role in the family saga, not as the supportive middle wife holding the structure together, but as a woman reclaiming her agency and telling her truth. As the internet digested the revelation, commentary threads turned into cathartic confessionals. Fans shared their own experiences with toxic family dynamics, favoritism, and emotional gaslighting, drawing parallels between their lives and what they saw unfolding on screen. Others revisited old episodes with new eyes, reinterpreting Janelle's quiet moments and steady demeanor as a mask for the deep, unspoken disconnect that was finally laid bare. It became clear that Janelle's statement had become more than just reality TV drama. It had struck a cultural nerve about respect, emotional equity, and the right to be seen and heard, even or especially in relationships built on religious structures and traditional roles. Amid the flood of fan reactions came think pieces from media outlets dissecting the sociological implications of Janelle's admission. What does it mean when a woman in a religiously justified plural marriage finally speaks out against the emotional imbalance in her home? How does her decision to publicly separate emotional liking from spiritual duty reflect the broader struggles of women balancing faith, autonomy, and family? Scholars and commentators weighed in, with some suggesting that Janelle's evolution mirrors a broader cultural reckoning taking place among women in conservative and patriarchal structures. The personal, it seems, had again become political. Janelle herself, in interviews following the episode, maintained her calm and measured tone, but there was no walking back her words. If anything, she doubled down, noting that the intimacy she once shared with Kody had long since eroded and that Robyn's presence in the family had, in her view, contributed to a dynamic that felt increasingly exclusionary. It wasn't about blame, she said. It was about recognition. She had tried, she had stayed, she had believed, but she had also seen over time what was not being said, what was being quietly chosen again and again, and eventually that silence became deafening. Robyn, for her part, responded through tears. In typical fashion, she expressed heartbreak and confusion, reiterating her desire for unity and insisting that she never sought to be the center of Kody's attention. Her emotional appeals, however, were met with skepticism by a large portion of the fanbase, who have long questioned the authenticity of her role in the family and her influence over Kody. Whether those suspicions are fair or not, they speak to the power of narrative framing and the lasting impressions left by reality television editing. But Janelle's blunt statement did more than just cast Robyn in a new light. It reframed the entire trajectory of the Brown family's evolution from a seemingly united plural family into a splintered constellation of individual journeys. In the days following the episode, Sister Wives producers released teasers indicating that the fallout from Janelle's words would be explored in depth in upcoming episodes. Behind-the-scenes footage and confessional interviews promised even more raw dialogue, including moments where other family members reckon with the shifting dynamics. For fans, the anticipation has reached a fever pitch. Yet even as the show promises more drama, many viewers believe the most important moment has already happened, not in any dramatic confrontation, but in Janelle's quiet, piercing truth. The journey of the Brown family has always been marked by contradictions: love and hierarchy, freedom and faith, unity and alienation. But Janelle's statement marks a turning point not just for the family, but for the audience's understanding of what it means to grow within and sometimes out of a relationship. The phrase, "I don't like Kody and Robyn," may sound simple, but its implications are vast. It speaks to the exhaustion of maintaining harmony at the cost of self. It captures the moment when respect becomes performative and affection becomes one-sided. And it serves as a reminder that in any family, plural or otherwise, emotional equity matters. Christine Brown, once a cornerstone of the Brown family's plural household, is no stranger to emotional evolution and public reinvention. Having stepped away from her spiritual marriage to Kody Brown, the patriarch of TLC's long-running reality series Sister Wives, Christine's journey from self-sacrifice to self-love has become one of the most transformative arcs in the franchise's decade-long history. Yet just as fans have begun settling into the narrative of her newfound independence and marital bliss with her new husband David Woolley, another unexpected twist has captured their attention: the fact that her ex-husband Kody and her current husband David have not only met but are getting along. More than that, they are, by all appearances, forming a budding friendship. And Christine's reaction, while grounded in her characteristic grace and dry wit, has sparked a fresh wave of emotional engagement, speculation, and public conversation about what it means to move on, heal, and redefine the shape of a family after its original form has shattered. To understand the emotional weight of this development, one must revisit the contours of Christine's departure from Kody and the family. It wasn't just a marital split, it was a dismantling of an entire belief system, a spiritual and emotional departure from a lifestyle she had subscribed to for nearly 3 decades. Christine's decision to leave came not with public screaming matches or camera-ready showdowns, but with an earnest confession of emotional neglect and romantic starvation. She had tried, fans recalled, with all the patience and warmth she could summon. She had waited for affection that never came, for equality that remained abstract, and for a love that never returned with the force she gave. When she left, it wasn't merely to chase happiness. It was an act of preservation. So, when Christine stepped into a new relationship with David Woolley, a man seemingly the opposite of her emotionally distant past, it felt to fans like the conclusion of a long, painful arc and the start of something lighter, freer. David, a widower and father with a calm and joyful demeanor, represented a kind of emotional clarity. With him, Christine began posting smiling photos, sunny outings, and moments of relaxed companionship, visual evidence of a love that was easy and mutual. The contrast to her former life was not subtle, and it was not lost on viewers. Against this backdrop, the image of David and Kody engaging in friendly conversation, even sharing a joke, seemed surreal to those who had emotionally invested in Christine's liberation. For many, the very idea of these two men, joined only by Christine's past and present, finding camaraderie felt like a contradiction. Yet Christine, when asked about their interaction, didn't recoil or react with discomfort. Instead, she responded with a tone that mixed surprise, cautious optimism, and characteristic honesty. There was, in her voice and expression, a sense of witnessing something improbable. And perhaps underneath it all, a quiet hope that healing could come in many forms, even ones she hadn't predicted. The fans, however, were not so easily calmed. Social media lit up with every captured photo and grainy clip of the two men shaking hands, standing side by side at a family function, or exchanging casual conversation. Theories flew fast. Was this Kody trying to reclaim some lost dignity by showing he could be the bigger man? Was David simply too secure to be threatened by Christine's past? Was Christine privately thrilled or secretly uneasy? These questions didn't remain abstract. They became part of a wider narrative that the show, now more than ever, seems unable to control. Christine's daughters, particularly Isabel and Truly, have often been central to viewers' understanding of Christine's decisions. In her eyes, their emotional safety and future well-being were motivators in her choice to leave Kody. And now, with David stepping into their lives as a gentle and present figure, his connection to Kody, their biological father, has added an unexpected layer of complexity. For some fans, the budding bromance between the men seemed almost too neat, too tidy a resolution to years of hurt and unresolved resentment. For others, it was exactly the kind of growth and maturity that could reshape what family looks like in the aftermath of fracture. Christine herself has offered more reflection than explanation. In an on-camera confessional, her smile was soft but knowing. She admitted she never imagined her new husband and her former partner would get along, but she also acknowledged the benefits. For the sake of the children, for the sake of peace, and perhaps for her own sanity, it wasn't such a bad thing. There was no sarcasm in her tone, but also no gushing praise. She stood, as she often does, in the complicated middle where relief and awkwardness coexist, where forgiveness is a process and not a destination. Viewers who remember the early seasons of Sister Wives will recall a younger Christine who often struggled for emotional attention, who bent herself around the needs of the family, who smiled through tears and insisted that everything was fine. That Christine has, over the years, blossomed into a woman more willing to name her needs and draw her boundaries. And so, her acceptance of Kody and David's connection is not a sign of resignation, but perhaps a sign of emotional evolution. She no longer has to protect her ego from the presence of her past. She has already moved beyond it. Their friendship, strange as it may seem, no longer threatens her identity.